The moment Captain Derek Moss said she was too pretty for combat, the entire briefing room went silent, because 20 seconds later, he'd be on his knees with a dislocated shoulder, and 30 seconds after that, he'd be begging her to let go. But none of the 40 Marines watching knew that yet. They only knew that the blonde woman in civilian clothes standing at the back of the room had just become the target of the most arrogant man on base. 6 hours earlier, the morning sun hadn't even cleared the horizon at Camp Pendleton when Lieutenant Kara Bennett walked through the main gate in faded jeans and a gray hoodie, her blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a duffel slung over one shoulder. No uniform, no insignia, no announcement. She looked like someone's girlfriend visiting for the weekend, not someone who had spent the last 18 months operating in places that didn't exist on any official map. The guard at the gate glanced at her ID, handed it back without comment, and waved her through. She didn't expect recognition. That was the point. Her boots crunched gravel as she crossed toward the operations building, the base still quiet in the pre-dawn stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a drill instructor's voice cut through the air, sharp and rhythmic. Closer by, 2 young privates jogged past, their breathing heavy, their eyes flicking toward her briefly before snapping forward again. One of them nudged the other, a barely concealed smirk forming. Kara ignored it. She'd learned a long time ago that people saw what they expected to see, and a woman in her late 20s with blonde hair and no rank on her chest wasn't someone most military men took seriously. Not at first. She pushed through the side door of the operations building and made her way down a narrow hallway lined with recruitment posters and faded unit photos. The briefing room was at the end, door half open, voices spilling out into the corridor. She paused just outside, listening. Rotation gets pushed. We're looking at another 6 weeks minimum, someone was saying, irritation threading through the words. That's unacceptable. Another voice cut in, sharper, more authoritative. I don't care what JSOC says. We've got operators sitting on their hands while some desk jockey shuffles paperwork. Kara recognized the tone immediately. Captain Derek Moss. She'd read his file on the flight in. Decorated Marine infantry officer, multiple deployments, respected by his men, known for running a tight unit. Also known for having an ego the size of his service record. She stepped inside. The room was packed. 40 Marines in crisp uniforms filled the rows of chairs, their attention fixed on the front where Moss stood beside a tactical map, his posture rigid, his jaw set. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that commanded a room without effort. And he knew it. Kara moved quietly to the back, setting her duffel down against the wall. A few heads turned. A few more followed. Whispers started to ripple through the rows. Moss noticed. His eyes tracked the movement, then landed on her. He stopped mid-sentence, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion to something close to amusement. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone carrying just enough edge to make it clear she didn't belong. Kara met his gaze, calm and level. "Just observing, sir." A few chuckles broke out among the Marines. Moss didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "This is a classified briefing," he said. "You're in the wrong room." His. Moss stopped a few feet away, looking her over with barely concealed condescension. "Sweetheart," he said, the word dripping with dismissal. "I don't know who told you this was visitor-friendly, but you need to leave." "I'm not a visitor," Kara said. "Then who are you?" Moss demanded. Before she could answer, he turned back to the room, gesturing toward her like she was a prop in his lecture. "You see this?" he said, his voice rising. "This is what happens when security gets sloppy. Some blonde walks in off the street, and nobody stops her." The room erupted in laughter. Moss fed off it, stepping closer to Kara, his confidence swelling. "You're too pretty for combat, honey," he said, his tone mocking now. "Maybe try the USO." The laughter grew louder. A few Marines were grinning openly now, watching Moss perform. And then Kara moved. It wasn't fast. It wasn't aggressive. It was precise. One step inside his stance. One controlled redirection of his reaching hand. One clean pivot. And suddenly, impossibly, Captain Derek Moss was on his knees, his right arm twisted behind his back at an angle that sent a sharp jolt of pain through his shoulder. The laughter died instantly. Moss tried to push back, tried to stand, but every movement only tightened the lock. His breathing quickened. Sweat broke out on his forehead. "Let go," he said through gritted teeth. Kara's voice was calm, almost instructional. Your center of gravity is too high, Captain. I said let go. And your assumption was too confident. The pressure increased, just slightly. Moss gasped. Please, he said, the word breaking. Please let go. Kara held him there for one more second, then released. Moss collapsed forward, couching himself with his good arm, his shoulder screaming. The entire room sat frozen. Kara stepped back, her posture unchanged, her breathing steady. And then the door at the front opened, and a colonel stepped inside. The colonel's boots struck the floor with sharp authority as he entered, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Moss, still on his knees, cradling his shoulder. Then his eyes shifted to Kara, and his expression changed immediately, not to confusion, but to recognition. Captain Moss, he said, his voice carrying the kind of calm that precedes a storm. On your feet. Moss struggled upright, his face flushed, his breathing uneven. Pain radiated through his shoulder, but it was the humiliation burning hotter now. 40 pairs of eyes were locked on him, witnessing the impossible. The colonel turned to Kara and gave a single, crisp nod. Commander Bennett, glad you made it. The words landed like a bomb. Every Marine in that room felt the shift, the sudden recontextualization of everything they had just seen. Whispers started immediately, low and urgent, spreading through the rows like wildfire. Moss's eyes widened. Commander? Kara reached into her jacket and pulled out a thin leather case, flipping it open to reveal her military ID. The photo matched. The rank was unmistakable. Commander, Naval Special Warfare Command. The colonel stepped forward, his tone hardening. Captain Moss, you just physically confronted a superior officer. Moss's face drained of color. Sir, I didn't. She wasn't in uniform. I didn't know. You didn't ask, Kara said quietly. The simplicity of the statement cut deeper than any reprimand. Moss opened his mouth, then closed it again, the defense dying before it could form. The colonel gestured toward the front of the room. Commander Bennett is here as part of a joint training evaluation. She was supposed to observe quietly. Instead, she just gave you a lesson you won't forget. Moss said nothing. His shoulder throbbed. His pride bled. The colonel's gaze swept the room. Everyone else, take notes. What you just witnessed is what happens when you assume rank, capability, and authority based on appearance. He paused, letting the weight settle. Commander Bennett has more combat deployments than most of you combined. Her record is classified beyond your clearance. And she just put your commanding officer on the ground without breaking a sweat. Silence. Absolute silence. Kara stepped forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, she said. I came here to evaluate readiness. And what I just saw tells me you've got a discipline problem. Moss stiffened, but he didn't argue. Kara continued. Respect isn't about who's loudest. It's not about who looks the part. It's about what you've earned. And you earn it by doing the work when no one's watching. She turned to the colonel. Permission to continue the briefing, sir. The colonel nodded. Granted. Moss stood frozen as Kara moved to the front of the room, picking up the tactical marker he'd dropped. She glanced at the map, then back at the Marines. Here's how this is going to work, she said. You're going to stop assuming you know what a threat looks, he said. Dismissed. The Marines stood, filing out in silence, their expressions thoughtful, subdued. A few glanced back at Kara as they left, but none of them met her eyes. Moss remained, standing stiffly near the door, his shoulders still aching. The colonel turned to him. Captain, a word. Moss nodded, his jaw tight. Kara picked up her duffel, slinging it over her shoulder. As she passed Moss, she paused. Get that shoulder looked at, she said quietly. And next time, ask before you assume. She didn't wait for a response. She just walked out, leaving him standing there with the weight of his mistake pressing down harder than any physical pain. Outside, the sun had fully risen, casting long shadows across the base. Kara took a slow breath, letting the tension ease from her shoulders. She had 3 more evaluations this week, 3 more rooms full of assumptions, and she was ready. 2 days later, Kara stood at the edge of a live-fire training range, watching Moss's unit run drills under the unforgiving midday sun. The Marines moved with precision now, sharper than before, their movements deliberate. Word had spread fast. The story of what happened in the briefing room had traveled through the base like electricity, growing slightly more dramatic with each retelling, but the core truth remained unchanged. Captain Moss had underestimated the wrong person. And now, standing 50 yards away with a pair of binoculars in hand, he was doing something most officers in his position wouldn't. He was learning. Kara lowered the binoculars as Moss approached, his posture stiff but not defensive. His right shoulder was taped beneath his uniform, the injury real but manageable. He stopped a few feet away, waiting. She didn't make him wait long. "Your spacing improved," she said, nodding toward the range. "And they're communicating better." Moss exhaled slowly. "They're motivated. Because they respect you," Kara said. "Even after what happened." A pause. Then Moss spoke, his voice quieter now. "I owe you an apology." Kara turned to face him fully. "You already gave one. In front of the colonel." "That was protocol," Moss said. "This one's personal." She studied him for a moment, reading the sincerity in his expression, the weight he was carrying. "Go ahead." Moss straightened slightly, meeting her gaze. "I judged you the second you walked in. I didn't see a commander. I didn't see an operator. I saw someone who didn't fit the image I had in my head. And I was wrong." Kara said nothing, letting him finish. "I've spent my entire career believing I knew what strength looked like," Moss continued. "What authority looked like. And in 60 seconds, you taught me I've been missing half the picture." Kara nodded slowly. "The half that doesn't announce itself." "Yeah," Moss said. "That half." A long silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just real. "Your Marines are good," Kara said finally. "But they follow your lead. So if you change how you see people, they will too." Moss absorbed that, then gave a small nod. "Understood." Kara picked up her gear bag, preparing to leave. The evaluation was complete. The report was already written. But before she turned to go, she paused. "For what it's worth," she said, "you didn't break. You listened. That's harder than most people think." Moss looked at her, something close to gratitude crossing his face. "Thank you, Commander." Kara gave a brief nod, then walked toward the waiting vehicle at the edge of the range. As she climbed in, she glanced back one last time. Moss was already heading back to his unit, shoulders squared, moving with purpose. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "How'd it go, ma'am?" Kara leaned back in the seat, watching the base shrink behind them. "Better than expected." 3 weeks later, a package arrived at Kara's